All right, let's continue. I'm on number 10. Again, GCF, I don't have a greatest common factor. I cannot do grouping. I have a trinomial, but this time I have a lead coefficient. So we are going to turn our trinomial into 4 terms. So I bring my first term down, I bring my last term down, and then I'm going to multiply 2 times 35, and that will give me 70, and then that is what I'm going to factor. So we have 1 times 70, 2 times 35, 5 times 14, 7 times 10. I think that's all we have. So I'm going to add and subtract, add and subtract, add and subtract, add and subtract. And I am looking for 3. I found it here. So I'm going to use the 7 and the 10. And again, it's in the minus column, so my signs are going to be different. So when I write my 7 and my 10 down here, remember those 2 terms are creating this middle term. So I'm going to say 7x and 10x. This sign goes to the larger of the 2 numbers, so 10 gets the negative and 7 gets the positive. And now that I have 4 terms, I should just be able to group it and factor that way. So we're going to group the first 2. I'm going to group the second 2. The first 2, the only thing I have a common factor would be an x. So that will leave me 2x and then plus 7. And common here, it looks like a 5. And because this is a negative, I'm factoring out a negative 5. So a negative 5 times 2x will give me negative 10x. And a negative 5 times a positive 7 will give me the negative 35. Parentheses are the same. So what I factored out, I will put in the first parentheses. The second parentheses will be the one that's repeating. And there's my answer. Okay, let's try the next one, number 11. Again, I don't have a greatest common factor. I can't do grouping. I have a trinomial. It has a lead coefficient. So that means I am bringing my first term down, and I'm bringing my last term down, and then I am multiplying 4 times 15, which will give me 60, and that is what I'm factoring. So I have 1 times 60, 2 times 30, 3 times 20, 4 times 15, 5 times 12, 6 times 10. Adding and subtracting, 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 adding and subtracting. Okay, I am looking for 23. I found it here. That means I'm using 3 and 20. And this means my signs are going to be the same. They're whatever this sign is. So I will have 3x and 20x, and they both are positive. And now that I have 4 terms, I can do my grouping. So we're going to group the first 2 and the last 2. First set of parentheses, it looks like I can only factor out an x, which leaves me 4x plus 3. Then I can only factor out, looks like a 5. And that will leave me a 4x and again a plus 3. Parentheses are the same, so what I factored out is in the first. The repeating parentheses I write next, and there would be my answer. All right, number 12, GCF. I don't have one. I can't do grouping. I don't have 4 terms. I have a trinomial, but I have a lead coefficient. So we're going to bring the first term down. I'm going to bring my last term down. And then I am multiplying 12 times 5. And then that's the number that I'm going to factor. So we have 1 times 60, 2 times 30, 3 times 20, 4 times 15, 5 times 12, 6 times 10. And we will add and subtract, add and subtract, add and subtract, add and subtract, add, subtract, add, and then subtract. And I'm looking for my middle term of 4. Here it is. I'm using these two terms, and my signs are going to be different. So I will have a 6x and a 10x, and the larger of the two numbers gets this sign, so that means I'll have a positive 10x and a negative 6x. And now that I have 4 terms, I can group the first two and group the second two. Common in the first parentheses, looks like I can factor out a 3 and an x. So 3x times 4x will give me 12x squared, minus 3x times 2 will give me 6x. Common in the second parentheses, looks like a 5, so a positive 5. And that's not right. Look, I can factor out something larger than a 3. All right, let me take that off. Let's try this again. I can factor out a 6 and an x. So 6x times 2x will give me 12x squared, and then minus 6x times 1 will give me 6x. Okay, common here I can factor out as a 5. 5 times 2x will give me 10x. 5 times, a negative. This is an x. 5 times a negative 1 will give me a negative 5. So parentheses are now the same. So we have 6x plus 5. And then repeating was 2x minus 1. So 6x plus 3, 6x plus 5, 2x minus 1. That looks good. Yep. So B would be the correct answer. All right, number 13, let's go through our steps. GCF, I don't have anything common I can factor out. I cannot do grouping. I don't have a trinomial, so the only thing left would be special cases. So is this first one a perfect square? Yes. And is this a perfect square? Yes. And am I subtracting? Yes. So that means I can factor. So the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 36 is 6. So remember, I write that twice. One of these gets to be positive and the other one gets to be negative, because this is the difference of perfect squares. Okay, let's try the next one. Again, is this a perfect square? Yes. Is this a perfect square? Yes. And am I subtracting? Yes. So I have the difference of perfect squares. So the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 144 is 12. So let's write that twice. One will get positive and one will get negative. Moving on, number 15. Again, do we have a perfect square? Yes. Do we have a perfect square? Yes. And is this a subtraction? Yes. So that means the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25 is 5. We write that twice. One gets to be positive, the other one gets to be a negative. So these are both positive. These are both negative. Here I have a positive 5 and a negative 5, so this one is good. So B is going to be the correct answer. Okay, number 16. I don't have a GCF. I cannot do grouping. I do have a trinomial with no lead. But I'm kind of seeing that this last term is a perfect square. So let's see if we can do the shortcut on this one. If this is a perfect square, what's the square root of 25? That would be 5. So if I say 5 plus itself, 5 plus 5, does that give me the middle term of 10? Yes, it does. So that means we can do the shortcut that we learned today. So we're going to do x, because the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25 is 5. This is a this is a plus sign, so we're going to put a plus in here, and then we're going to square it. And so this would be my answer. Okay, let's try number 17. Again, I can't do GCF. I cannot do grouping. I do have a trinomial with no lead, but check this out. See if that's a perfect square first. It is. The square root of 64 is 8. If I do 8 plus 8, do I get the middle term of 16? Yes, I do. So the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 64 is 8. This time, this is a minus, so I'm going to put a minus sign here, and then I will square it. And there's my answer. So number 18, again, I cannot do GCF. I cannot do grouping. I don't have 4 terms. I have a trinomial with no lead, but check this one out first. Is that a perfect square? Yes. So the square root of 49 is 7. And if I do 7 plus 7, do I get the middle term of 14? And yes, I do. So the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 49 is 7. This is a plus right here, so this will be a plus also, and I'm going to square it. So this would be my answer I'm looking for. So it looks like it's going to be A.